Hello, my name is GPMAR, and today I'll be giving a brief commentary on the fanfiction Bloo, Kazoo vs. the World. This is a Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends fanfiction by MCAR Racing Queen, who goes by the name LovelyLivelyV on YouTube. I will link both the fanfiction and her YouTube channel in the description below. Before we begin, I just wanted to say that the original intent of this video was to discuss the most significant aspects of this story, but since I've already talked about them in my essay commentary, which I'll link in the description also, I figured that I would just be repeating myself if I talked about them here. So I'm going to use this video as an opportunity to discuss things that I neglected to mention or additional thoughts that I have. So this video is primarily for the author and those who have already read the essay commentary that I wrote for it. So if you haven't, I would recommend reading that before watching this video. First of all, I want to address how well characterized I think the rest of the cast are, because their mistreatment of Bloo isn't instantaneous or irrational. It comes after Bloo's outburst, right? And I think that's important to clear up because we don't want others thinking that we're convinced the others are mean to Bloo for no justifiable reason. What happens is usually they can at least tolerate Bloo until a moment comes where Bloo irritates or annoys them, and then the mistreatment comes. But of course they hold him to high and unreasonable standards. And I think it's quite emblematic of certain people who claim to like Bloo and say he's an entertaining character, and yet in the same breath say they want to throw him against the wall or punt him across the Atlantic Ocean. And not in an affectionate way, but as a means of discipline or outlet for frustration. So these people and the rest of the Foster's gang have very striking similarities, since they both claim to like Bloo generally when he's behaving, but then treat him like an outsider when he's not. And speaking of similarities, I wanted to touch upon the connection I frequently make between viewers of the show and the Foster's mansion, such as in my essay. There are so many similarities between the two from just the show alone, but I think this fanfiction really takes it to the next level. The mistreatment of Bloo, the isolation, the unreasonable expectations, it's all really akin to the critiques of not only those who hate Bloo, but also those who say they're neutral, but think Bloo needs to be treated harshly from time to time to counteract his behavior. Now, I don't know if V, the author, intended to make that parallel, because of course this is my interpretation. But the resemblance between the two groups is really uncanny, and so I would love to know, V, if you meant to make that sort of allegory. And I also brought up the issue with the narrator in my essay. The argument I made was that here is a clear misportrayal of the facts of the Foster's Home canon by the narrator, and also the seemingly intentional obscuring of how Bloo actually felt, because for about the first 4 chapters, the story doesn't really dwell upon the hurt that Bloo's going through. But V actually clarified that the line I used as an example of the narrator's bias was just the narrator embodying what the others felt at that moment, what they thought was a betrayal on Bloo's part in The Big Lebowski. So it wasn't the narrator being objective. It was that Bloo felt the presence of his friends in that paragraph. The reason why I didn't think this was the narrator embodying anyone was because the narrator was pretty objective in the rest of the paragraph and describing accurate details of the scene. So I thought, okay, he's not trying to convey anyone's emotions because he's trying to be impartial right now. And so if the narrator was trying to give objective information in the rest of the paragraph, he must be trying to do that in that one line as well. But since the narrator said something to portray Bloo in a negative light, I thought maybe he's more biased than he lets on. But I guess that wasn't really the case. I think V also mentioned that the reason why the story doesn't describe Blue's internal pain up until about chapter 5 is because she wanted to build up the suspense and reveal of everything that Blue has gone through throughout the entire course of the series. But I want to say that it could be both. It could be the narrator obscuring things for suspense, but also can be seen as an allegory for a lot of the Foster's community ignoring Blue's pain throughout the show. You might often hear online people asking things like, why would Blue do this, or why would Blue say this, without any regard to the overt insecurities Blue has displayed in several episodes. But again, that's just my interpretation. One of the last things I wanted to address, though, was how well this story displays the absolute hopelessness Blue is feeling inside, especially during chapter 5. We can see that the whole mansion has turned against Blue, and he can no longer help but give in to the psychological impact of the ostracism he's been enduring this entire story. And he's all alone. There's no one there to cheer him up or support him or help him learn or guide him. He has no one. And even from the beginning, when he tried to ask Frankie about his Prankapalooza idea, he did have some distrust for the others, because one of the things that was mentioned when the narrator was embodying Blue was that Frankie would probably laugh at his face if he suggested that idea to her. The fact that he's reluctant to share this with someone like Frankie or Harriman indicates that he's had little trust in them from the start. And some might say that Blue's never been the type to ask someone for permission in the first place, and that's true, but usually it's because he's afraid of not being able to do it, not because he would be demoralized by someone's response. So he was already in a place of distrust with the others from the get-go, but now that he's witnessed how low the others would stoop to teach him a lesson, he's finally realizing the complete desolation of his situation. And V does a really good job at describing the total despair Blue is in. She really captures the emotions and the pain that he's going through and the trauma he's reflecting on. There's one last point that I wanted to bring up that I think we as Blue fans should really address, and it sort of relates to some of the things Blue said in one of the last moments of the last chapter. Blue mentions getting away from the others and the mansion to abandon all the trauma that he's endured there. And I can definitely see that happening. I think it's completely in character for Blue. But some Blue fans take this idea to the extreme and say he would and should leave the others and the mansion forever because they don't care about him and he doesn't really care about them either. But that's not the case, because as we see in the show, Blue does care about the others and he does want to spend time with them even after everything they've done to him. I can definitely see Blue running away as described in this story, but I'm inclined to believe that he wouldn't be able to do it long term. Going back to the story, I think it would be great if it were emphasized that despite everything, Blue still cares about the others. So you have this dichotomy between Blue wanting to run away and leave all the trauma behind and leave the people who have induced that trauma, but at the same time still wanting, for some unexplicable reason, their love and attention. Even in season 6, you can still see Blue wanting to hang out with the others, such as in Pranks for Nothing, where he wanted to stay up with them, Blue 2, where he wanted to go to the water park with them, but then they couldn't, and so he wanted to have a funeral with them. And then we see the affection he still has for someone like Eduardo in Read 'em and Weep. But that's just my opinion. Some may disagree. I think that's about all I wanted to say for this review. I know this video isn't exhaustive, and I originally intended to cover more, but I'd just be repeating things I already said in my essay, so If you like a more comprehensive review, you can go there. Thanks to LovelyLivelyV for writing this story and letting me do this review. Definitely check out her Bloo analysis video if you haven't already. And justice for Bloo. I don't know. Thanks for watching.